Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side. Doug Billings here with you. Thank you very much indeed for watching us from all across the Republic. I appreciate it very much. Today, Kansas still in the news, my home state. Kansas, who and where, if we had a strong governor, this black mass that's scheduled for March 28th wouldn't be happening. I'm telling you, if I were governor of Kansas, I can lay out right now and today what I would do, not only by the power of the executive pen, but also constitutionally with powers that are vested to the governor. It's ridiculous that this thing is happening. It would not have happened if in the time of the founding fathers. They did not intend this. And for all of the kooks out there who say, oh no, satanic black masses are covered by free speech and freedom of religion. No, they're not. No, they're not. The founding fathers had no intention of such a thing, and the judicial branch and members of our legislatures across this country have lost sight of the divine providence of God and the intent of the founding fathers. So today, that's our focus, getting back on track, and I'll explain. If I were governor of the state of Kansas, here's what I would do to shut this nonsense down right away. Ladies and gentlemen, The Right Side with Doug Billings is now upon you. Are you ready?
Hey everybody, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to do a big shout out for my great friend and one of the best in the business, Mr. Doug Billings. Right side with Doug Billings, right side with Doug Billings. Doug is the future of the airwaves when it comes to independent broadcasters and podcasters. He is the new Rush Limbaugh. He's exactly what America needs right now, looking for honesty, looking for wisdom, looking for truth, looking for patriotism. Listen to Doug Billings at Right Side with Doug Billings. God bless you and God bless America, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are winning. We're winning, winning, winning. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Are you ready?
We are not liberal snowflakes who melt away in the face of tragedy, adversity, and challenge. We are a covenant nation under God, and His divine providence is not dead and it's not gone. It is living within each and every one of you. And you will bring it to life in such a way that the world has never seen before. We never back down. We never give up. We march forward.
And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to The Right Side. I appreciate you. Good to be with you. And wow, what's going on in Kansas, my home state? I've got to tell you, it's troublesome because it doesn't have to be happening. It all can be avoided, and it should be avoided. I'm going to take a stab at explaining this, and I'm going to outline for you some of the ways by which if I were governor for a day, if I were governor at all for a 4-year term, whatever, I'm going to outline what I would do. It's not that difficult. And if there were a strong governor in office right now in Topeka, Kansas, this all would not be happening. So welcome. From smack dab in the middle of the fruited plain, here we go. The Right Side with Doug Billings is upon you. Oh, and by the way, DougBillings.us, DougBillings.us, the website over there. We never charge for this program, but I always ask you, hey, if you like me and if you like the content, if you like what's coming to you, the truth, thoughtful, provocative, and always accurate analysis and opinion about the news and the state of play in America, head over to DougBillings.us and just prayerfully consider setting up a $5 a month recurring monthly donation so that we can continue to produce the show and offer it for free. Never charge anybody to watch this thing. I send it out every day for free, and going to do the same thing today. But if you like it, if you like the program, if you like me, head over to DougBillings.us and prayerfully, please consider that $5 a month donation. So on March 28th, 2025, a week from tomorrow, ironically, the last day of the Kansas legislature, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's a group called the Satanic Grotto that plans to hold a so-called black mass in the Capitol, on the grounds of the Capitol in Topeka, Kansas. And it is something that could be avoided. It is something that should be avoided. If we had a strong governor, it would be easily done. And I want to explain to you how if I were lucky enough to be in that office, how I would do it. It is something that I've been thinking an awful lot about. It's something that I think is it deserves to be discussed, and I think that most people in America agree. This is ridiculous. Um, I I think that the executive pen, I think that the executive power, I think that the Constitution itself allows for a wide swath of power for the governor. And I'm going to explain what I mean here. So let me get into that. I was just looking at the chat box over in the room. Hey, Shani, good to see you. Sorry you got shut down on Spaces. Anyway, good to have you here in the chat room. Good to see you. Not sure I can help you with the Spaces problem, but I'm going to talk to you about what's going on with the governor in Kansas. So March 28th, a week from tomorrow, this whole thing is scheduled to go down in Kansas. They've made it clear, this group, the Satanic Grotto, they intend to desecrate a consecrated Eucharistic host from the Catholic Church, to mock the sacred and dedicate our state legislature in Kansas to Satan himself. That's what this group is intending to do. Okay, those are the facts. The Satanic Black Grotto, that's what they call themselves. They have stolen a consecrated Catholic host. I'm Catholic. In fact, many of you may not know this. I spent a couple of years in the seminary studying to be a priest way back in the day. And look, the almighty and ever powerful, all-powerful, loving God of the universe, Jesus, can remove himself from a consecrated host in these kinds of situations. So it's not as if we have that to worry about, but it's the fact that they stole it. It's theft of property. I'm going to get into this today as far as how we stop this group, how I would stop it if I were the governor, if we're allowed to dream a little bit here, how I would stop it. So a couple of thoughts on that. The Satanic Grotto, their group, they're going to mock Christianity, specifically Catholic Christianity, but every Christian in the nation, and certainly every Christian in Kansas, ought to be outraged about this. And we have a governor who's allowing this to take place when she has the power to prevent it. Laura Kelly, she's a member of the Communist Socialist Party. As I've been telling you, the Democrat Party does not exist any longer. The Communist Socialist Party, well, we in Kansas have a Communist Socialist governor. It's a real problem. That's why if I were governor, things would be different. We also have a president of the Senate who's a Republican who issued a statement saying something, I'm going to paraphrase it. Well, although we don't like this, we don't like these kinds of things at all, we're really powerless to do anything about it. It's protected by free speech and freedom of religion. Ladies and gentlemen, neither the governor nor the president of the Senate is correct. And they're not evidently brave enough to stand up and talk to the people of this country, much less their constituents in the state of Kansas, and explain how it could be stopped. If I were governor of Kansas, I wouldn't stand for it. I couldn't look the people of Kansas in the eye for a second. I would call up or create a militia. You're darn right I would. Call up the National Guard, secure the Capitol, protect the innocent people of the state from the evils of this satanic cult. Satanism is not a religion, ladies and gentlemen, and I can tell you this, our founding fathers had no intention of allowing this kind of thing to take place under the banner of free speech or freedom of religion. And I know that many of you kook liberals out there are going to be lambasting me and yelling out loud, well, the judicial system is ruled and the courts have ruled. I'm going to tell you why that's incorrect. We have in this country, and I admit it, we have gone off track, off the rails with regards to the original intent of the founding fathers, and certainly with regards to the divine providence of God in this republic. And today I'm going to tell you why this is not just a gut reaction. It's a principled stand that's rooted in the Constitution, rooted in the law, and in the moral foundation of our republic. And you won't see very many politicians, certainly not from the establishment swamp, say anything remotely similar to what I'm going to be telling you today. Let's start with the facts, all right? The Satanic Grotto It's led by a guy named Michael Stewart, and he's been very vocal about what their plans are on March 28th. And it isn't some quiet protest or a free speech rally. They're promising a 4-part ritual: blasphemous, provocative, and by their own admission, designed to express what they call hurt and anger over what they call religious oppression. They're targeting the Kansas legislature, which is in both houses in Kansas, the Senate and the House are Republican. We have a supermajority Republican, and you have to almost put that in quotes because not all of them act like Republicans, but it's on paper, it's a supermajority. They're targeting the Kansas legislature because, and to their credit, the Kansas legislature supports pro-life policies, claiming in the Satanic Grotto claims that the legislature is pandering to groups like Kansas Catholic Conference. And here's the kicker. There's evidence for all of this. Sworn testimony, ladies and gentlemen, in a lawsuit filed by the Archdiocese of Kansas City in Kansas, and that they've stolen a consecrated host to desecrate during the event. That's not just offensive, it's a crime. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Catholic tradition of Christianity started by Jesus, Jesus said during the Last Supper, "This is my body, this is my blood." Catholics believe that the real presence of Jesus Christ is there in the Eucharist. And the Satanic Grotto, Michael Stewart stole a consecrated Eucharist. Now, Governor Laura Kelly, a commie socialist. Remember, the Democratic Party no longer exists anymore. They have combined communism and socialism together. They are the Commie Socialist Party. They are not a pro-America political party. Again, something else that politicians need to be saying out loud and often. She's not happy about the event. Now, to her credit, she doesn't want this to all be happening. She calls it distasteful. Oh, this is very distasteful. But she's hiding behind the First Amendment, claiming that her hands are tied. Now, she's moved the event. It originally was scheduled to be inside the Capitol, which is clearly outrageous. But she's moved it outside, but she's still letting it happen on the Capitol grounds. With all due respect to the governor, that's a cop-out. A 100% cop-out. And Senate President Ty Masterson, a Republican, also copped out and didn't put up a fight with regards to any of this. He claimed that it was all covered by the First Amendment. I mean, and I think that Ty Masterson is actually, after this legislative session ends, is planning on announcing his run for the governorship of the state of Kansas. We don't need a governor like that who doesn't speak up about things like this. If I were in the governor's office, it would be a different approach. One honors the Constitution of Kansas and of the United States. And we have actions that are codified in both of those documents that we can take. We can take action that is constitutionally based from a federal level and a state level while protecting the people of Kansas. All right, let's talk about the Constitution first, because that's the bedrock of all of this. And I prefer to focus on the Kansas Constitution because that's the document that really controls this entire situation. But I'm also going to blend my opinion, my analysis, my commentary today on what the federal Constitution says as well, especially the intent of the Founding Fathers. The First Amendment guarantees free speech and the free exercise of religion. But, ladies and gentlemen, it is not a blank check. The Supreme Court has long held that there are limits to this. You can't yell, and you've all heard it a million times, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, just as Oliver Wendell Holmes famously put it in the case Shinek versus the United States way back in 1919. That's when he said that. And you can't incite imminent violence per the ruling that was rendered in Brandenburg versus Ohio in 1969. And you sure as heck don't get a free pass to commit crimes under the guise of expression. Here's where the rubber meets the road, folks. And this is a good thing. And I like Chris Koba a lot, the Kansas Attorney General. He's doing one hell of a good job in that role. He pointed out, rightly so, that stealing a consecrated host, which is property of the Catholic Church, could constitute theft by deception, which is a crime under Kansas law. The Satanic Grotto's stated intent to destroy it, which they've publicly said, well, that's another crime, destruction of property. So there are real crimes to go after here. The First Amendment doesn't protect criminal acts, period. So if I were governor, I'd direct law enforcement, the Kansas Highway Patrol, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, to investigate these allegations immediately. And if they hold up, this isn't a peaceful protest or some sort of peaceful gathering. It's a crime scene. It's a crime scene waiting to happen, and I would shut it down before it starts. Let's go a little bit deeper. Come on with me. Even if no theft occurred, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Stewart denies it for what it's worth. He does claim he's got this host, and he stole it. If no theft occurred, the ritual crosses that line still, that no decent society should tolerate this on public grounds. The state isn't obligated to facilitate every act of provocation just because someone slaps free speech. They label it as free speech on it. The Capitol is not some sort of a public sandbox, my friends. It's the seat of our government. It's a symbol of our shared values and shared laws. Allowing a group to mock the beliefs of millions of people in the country and hundreds of thousands of people in Kansas. In Kansas, 426,000 Catholics in the state. And every Christian in the state, in the country, not just Catholic Christians, but every Christian should be outraged about this. They're going to hold this event while at the same time, I'm talking about the Satanic Grotto and what their plan is, to dedicate our legislature in Kansas to Satan. That is not neutral governance. It's a surrender to chaos. And that's exactly what the governor and the president of the Senate have done. They've surrendered to the chaos. And that is the motto, one of the three pillars of this communist-socialist radical liberal movement in America: chaos, crisis, and crime. Let's see how much of it we can perpetuate across this land. Look at everything they've done, especially during the Biden years. Crisis, chaos, crime. Now, some are going to say right away, hang on there a minute, Doug. What about their rights? Don't they get to speak up? I mean, this is America, after all. Sure. Yeah, they've got rights on their own dime, on their own property. But the state doesn't have to hand them a megaphone or a microphone or a stage. Folks, the Supreme Court has ruled on this very issue. In Church of Leukemia Babulu versus the City of Hialeah, I think I pronounced that right. The Church of Leukemia Babalu I versus the City of Hialeah. This is all in 1993. I assume that's in Hawaii, but I'll research that even further. But this is just as recently as 1993. The justices of the Supreme Court made it clear that governments can regulate conduct that violates general laws, like theft or public safety risks, without infringing on religious freedom. And in a case called Pleasant Grove City versus Sumum in 2009, even more recently, the Supreme Court said that public property isn't an open forum for every message. The state gets to decide what's appropriate on its own turf. Let me read that to you again. The state gets to determine what's appropriate on its own turf. And the Kansas Constitution gives the governor plenty of legal standing to disallow and take action to prevent these kinds of gatherings. If If I were governor of Kansas, ladies and gentlemen, I would argue that this black mass isn't just free speech, it's a deliberate act of aggression against the public order. It's designed to provoke and disrupt and offend on the last day of the legislative session, no less. That's not a coincidence. It's calculated. It's a calculated jab at lawmakers and at citizens alike. It's a jab at all of the lawmakers in that body of government in the state of Kansas. And I am just beside myself that no one seems to be standing up publicly to say what I'm saying to you right now. And when you've got Catholic groups planning to counter protest, the risks of confrontation skyrocket. I'm not waiting, if I'm governor, I'm not waiting for a riot to break out on the Capitol steps. I'd create a state militia. I'd call up the Kansas National Guard to secure the perimeter, enforce the law, and keep the peace. And let's talk about the militia and National Guard piece here just for a minute, because that's where my approach has its teeth. The Kansas Constitution, specifically in Article 8, Section 1, says that the militia consists of all, or could consist of all, able-bodied men between the ages of 21 and 45, subject to the governor's call. The National Guard, under the Kansas Statute 48501, is at my disposal as governor to repel invasion or to suppress insurrection. Now, I'm not saying that this is an invasion based on a military sense of that word or that phrase, but it is an assault on the moral and the legal order of the state of Kansas and its people. And as governor, my first duty would be to protect the people, not just their bodies, but their rights, their peace, their way of life. Why aren't Republicans saying this? I mean, picture this. March 28th rolls around. The satanic grotto shows up, and they're ready to defy the governor's order to stay outside. They try to march into the Capitol. As Michael Stewart said himself, he threatened it, and he called it civil disobedience. We may just enter the Capitol. Okay? Meanwhile, thousands of Catholics and other God-fearing Kansas Christians are rallying nearby, praying for reparation, praying for peace, but tensions boil over. Without a strong presence, you've got a powder keg there. But with the Guard and the militia deployed, state troopers as well, calmly, professionally, but firmly deployed, I would ensure that no one crosses that line. No theft, no desecration, no crisis, no chaos, no crime. The law holds. That's what I would do, and that's my approach. Now, again, the kooks, the rhinos, and the liberals, especially the liberals, I would like to think that most reasonably thinking Republicans are all on board with this. Clearly, we can't argue with what I'm saying as Republicans. But there would be some kooks, especially on the liberal side, crying out, "Overreach, Billings! That's an overreach!" They'd say I'm trampling on rights. But look, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution is not a suicide pact. As Justice Robert Jackson wrote in a case called Terminelio versus Chicago back in 1949, he said, the choice is not between order and liberty. It's between liberty with order and anarchy without either. Let me say that again. It's a good quote. You should remember it. The choice is not between order and liberty. It's between liberty with order and anarchy without either. I'd choose liberty with order every time, ladies and gentlemen, and so would most of you. Within a shred of intellectual maturity, that's the conclusion we would all draw together. The satanic grotto can scream their blasphemy from a street corner or from a private lot. from their own building. They've got that right, but they don't get to hijack the people's house in the state of Kansas. Okay, that was the zoom in. Let's zoom out for a minute. Let's take a broader look. Why does this matter so much? Kansas, ladies and gentlemen, isn't just flyover country. I can tell you. It's the heart of America. The heart of America geographically and morally. We're a state built on hard work, on faith in God, in Jesus, and common sense. When a group like this satanic grotto targets our capital, they're not just attacking Christians and Catholics. They're spitting on the values that hold us together, trampling on the true intent of our founding fathers. And if we let this slide, then what's next? Seriously, public sacrifices, blood rituals. I mean, where is the line going to be drawn? There won't be one if we're not careful. I'm not here to play the morality police. Please. I don't care what these folks believe in their private lives. And I don't care what they say in their own private buildings. But when they bring it to the Capitol, when they steal sacred property and they threaten to desecrate it, they've crossed into the public square when they do that. And that's my jurisdiction if I'm the governor. The founding fathers didn't write the Constitution to protect lawlessness or to turn our institutions into playgrounds for provocateurs. They wrote the Constitution inspired by God to secure the blessings of liberty. And that includes the right of Kansans to live free from this kind of deliberate insult, quite frankly. Furthermore, and consider this, our rights come to us from God. God and our founding fathers did not intend to grant rights to worship Satan. That is a topic of free will, not of rights that come to us from God. The topic of free will and all of this stuff can be expressed and covered in private, outside of the Capitol grounds. So what would I do to stop this step by step, you ask? Step number one, specifically, I would issue an executive order banning the event on Capitol grounds outright, citing that we have credible allegations of criminal activity and a threat to public order. Secondly, I would direct the Kansas Highway Patrol and other law investigation agencies at my disposal to investigate these theft crimes, order subpoenas, get witnesses, the works. I would order all of it. Third, I'd activate the National Guard and create a militia, positioning them around the Capitol on March 28th, early in the morning, probably at midnight. They would begin organizing and assembling to enforce civil law, to enforce the ban that I've just rejected by virtue of my executive order, and to deter any of this, quote, civil disobedience that the group president says he's going to stir up. Fourth, I would address the state of Kansas live on television, and I would explain why this is not about censorship. It's about the law. It's about safety. It's about decency. I would get in front of the people. And yeah, there'd be pushback. Don't think that I don't know that. The whack job groups like the ACLU would sue. The Satanic Grotto would scream and threaten to do the same thing. The legacy media would call me a tyrant and a dictator and a wannabe king, a mini Trump, all of that. But I'd stand my ground because I have the Constitution, I have the intent of the founders, I have the law, and I have the people of Kansas on my side. And when the dust settles, ladies and gentlemen, we would have a precedent. Kansas doesn't bend the knee for every loudmouth with a grudge. Folks, this isn't just about one ritual. It's about who we are as a state. It's about who we are as a nation. If I were governor, I'd fight for Kansas. Not with misunderstanding of what we can do and what we can't, and not being afraid to speak out loud because I might be canceled, but with an innate belief in the divine providence of God. That's where I come from. And the intent of the state and the intent of the republic as designed by our founding fathers. The militia and the guard aren't there to intimidate people. They're there to protect people. And the ban isn't about silencing, it's about upholding law and order, which, of course, the radical liberal movement in America wants to discard and defund. Remember? Crisis, crime, and chaos. And this stand that I'm taking is not about me. It is about us. And someone, perhaps me, needs to say it louder and more clearly. That's where I'm coming from. And that's where I hope you stand with me shoulder to shoulder, especially those of you who live in Kansas. And let me know what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please hit me up on X, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Truth Social, wherever you find me and follow me. Subscribe to me over on YouTube. I just started rebuilding the channel over there. Go to DougBillings.us and please prayerfully consider that $5 a month subscription. Set it up. It's real simple, a recurring donation. Look, we are in this thing together. And this is how it's how I make a living. It's how I tell the truth. And it's how I try to express to you what other people, especially those in the elected class, don't have the guts to talk to you about. And it really is what I would do if I were governor. And maybe that day is closer than we may think. We'll see. If you like what you hear, I appreciate you. Please share this show when I post it out. I appreciate you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You know that I do. We're in this thing together. Believe it, my friends, for the Republic, for Kansas. Cheers.